The moment of death is the one common experience of all who are ever conceived. Once conceived, we have ignition, and life will proceed normally, unless interrupted artificially, until one is burnt out. And then we have this intersection between time and eternity, the old experience of mankind. That moment of truth, which has always been the same. For those who die in atrocious pain, the first instinct, they tell us, is one of a relief from pain. But then it all starts with regard to what they begin to perceive afterwards, what they begin progressively to understand and perceive then not with the senses, but with the senses of the soul, without any distraction. Now the soul can be lulled to sleep by those distractions in its course through time. But when one moment after death it no longer perceives through that indirect means of the senses, then it's quite a different story. Now this moment of death for Stephen was something of a cosmic nature. He was the proto-martyr, the first of all Christian martyrs. It can be said that John the Baptist had already preceded the Lord in this way, even the Holy Innocents actually. But Stephen was in the fullness of time, and he was a deacon, and he was clearly aware of what was going on. There's been a play on his name over the centuries. Stephanos is a crown, and he was gaining the crown. Many have been the experiences of saints and martyrs at that point, and I remember hearing one time when in France how there was in pagan persecution and martyrdom going on of Christians, and the pagan soldier responsible with others for this execution saw something. One of the Christian martyrs had a moment of weakness and it seemed back down, but he saw this pagan, crowns prepared for each one, and the one there given ready for the one who was backing down, still hovering, and he himself jumped in and wanted to die as a Christian martyr and was baptized in his own blood and gained that crown. One thinks in recent times how those Christians were marched in whatever country it was to a martyrdom in the Islamic bloc by the sea somewhere, and I think it went around YouTube. And apparently while the chants were going on in Arabic, they were very quiet, but they knew the glory that was awaiting them. And there was one, I think, who was of dark skin, and there's a story behind him. I forget what it was, but it was very similar to what I've just said about this pagan. The moment of death then for these martyrs is glorious because they go straight to heaven, get on the cross with the Lord, and they will have powers of intercession. We know that from invocation. For instance, our own martyr in Wales, John Roberts, who died martyred at Tyburn, and he was caught at the altar in his robes. He died for being a priest, and we've invoked him in the past, and we found huge powers of intercession there, the martyrs. Now, with regard to those dying over the centuries, that usually is not requested of the Christian soul, but it can be indirectly. We think how, for instance, Teresa used all her pain, and apparently she also died with words similar in her mouth, "I want to help you from where I will be," and we can invoke her too. It seems actually to work. We've had that experience, and they're not that far away, those who've been very close to us in this life and have loved the same Lord and have used well their pain, and never did she ever complain. That is a virtual martyrdom, suffering well accepted and well handled. And it's not always our case if we're true and honest. we moan and lose all the merit. But then we, especially who handle a lot of people who are going towards death, see the difference in attitude, and when close to death one certainly sees the difference in attitude. And also when one hears people saying things, for instance things that do happen at the moment of death, a lot actually does happen in that strange frontier period, a kind of twilight zone in which time and eternity are almost intersecting already. Eyes open, and they are looking, but not at you, but perhaps at something behind you. Are they family members? Are they angels? The Blessed Virgin? What is going on there? It's as though at that point they're being made ready for a different mode. Maria Simma, who was a victim soul for the Holy Souls, by the way this is being offered for the Holy Souls, this Holy Mass, maintained that there was a tiny moment at that point, even when perhaps for us we can't get through to them anymore and they might be apparently dead, we're not quite sure of that frontier, but it was, according to her, something which was very important for this reason, that the Lord at that point was doing the maximum to try to get them in, and was trying to get through to them by some means that we don't quite know, to make them aware of what was ahead, so that they fully at that point were aware and able to say yes or no. But apparently, and this comes out from the Hell manuscript which I translated years ago, what tends to happen, alas, is this, that if a person for many, many years has had the habit, the inclination of saying no to divine grace, that the danger is that from that very force of habit it will also be the same at that moment. Now we notice several things in this moment of death of Stephen. He uses a word which has been used by martyrs over the centuries. For instance, at Tyburn, it's from the Psalm 30, "Into your hands I commend my spirit," which the Lord also used on Calvary, something similar. And he yielded up the spirit we have there in full command of the last breath. But also we have another similarity with the Lord's death. It's the fact that he, at this moment of petering out under the stones, asks for forgiveness for his persecutors. Very, very similar to Calvary. And it is noted also by commentators that this added verse is not without significance. Saul was approving of this murder. He was holding the garments of those who were stoning him. Now it appears that what happened therefore is that this dying martyr obtained the grace of conversion for Saul of Tarsus, who was to give us about half the New Testament. That is interesting. St. John Paul II, after recovering eventually from his, what should have been assassination, went to the prison cell of his assassin, Alexa, and the first thing the assassin said to him was not actually to ask for pardon, but to look him into the eyes and said, "How are you alive?" Because he had used a very high precision instrument and he knew that there was no way humanly he could not be alive. He didn't, of course, know of the miracle of Our Blessed Lady intervening, which we now know fully about, on that 13th of May. But the goodness of John Paul II comes through there, doesn't it? Forgiveness. And we easily hang on to a grudge, not noisily but quietly, that festers inside us because somebody said something nasty to us. But then we have this word, first of all, that they see his face as though it were of an angel. We have this strange moment in which he already sees heaven opened and the Son of God standing at the right hand of the Father, a position of majesty, the glory of Tabor, the glory of the resurrection, the Alpha and the Omega who will judge everyone, including the persecutors. And we have also the fact that he falls asleep And that word has been picked up by the Christian centuries as well. To sleep is to be in a place of rest, and that in Greek is koimeterion, which gives us the word cemetery. So every Christian cemetery echoes this verse. We have often on our coffins, in Wales it's angorphwys, resting. We have rest in peace or something over graves and coffins to this day. And it is this, rest in the Lord. And Paul has it also in one of his epistles. Many have fallen asleep in the Lord. And when one goes before a cemetery and the graves in the cemetery, one has that element of rest. And doing teacher training years ago in Wales, in a country area, very Welsh, I went with the children because we were doing a project on the family, and we went to the local graveyard. We went also into the parish church to find the records, and it was quarryman, it was a quarry area for the grandparents. But each of these tombs, in Wales anyway, had a very well chosen word. In Wales it's the word that counts, not sculpture but the word, and so they chose always something to sum up the person's life, usually quite well, often from scripture but not always. Strangely enough, my own grandfather didn't choose one from scripture, even though he was responsible for the chapel. He chose simply this, Cwsg fy mwylyd. Sleep, my beloved. Rest. Will we be ready? Will we be like Teresa? Or will we waste our time moaning?